The signal buried in dust, the scout vessel Xerelian drifted silently over the rogue planet, its hull gleaming faintly against the backdrop of endless stars. Commander Velth, a seasoned Zyran explorer with a sleek obsidian carapace and sapphire eyes, watched the readings on his screen with a puzzled expression. The planet below was unlike anything they'd catalogued. No orbit, no star, and yet it had atmosphere, gravity, even faint residual warmth. The strangest thing, however, was not the planet's isolation, it was the faint pulse, a repeating signal, too consistent to be natural and too ancient to belong to anything living. "Commander," said Navigation Officer Seret, his voice hushed and tight. "That pulse, it's repeating in intervals that match the golden mean." Vettel's mandibles twitched. "That's not a coincidence." The crew of the Xerelian initiated descent procedures. The planet's surface was shrouded in fine, red dust so fine it resembled a sea of blood under twilight. It clung to the air, the ground, the ship's hull. As they touched down near the magnetic pole, the only zone free of dust, the sensors lit up with readings of an isolated structure, a singular building, geometrically perfect. 5 kilometers of untouched silence, encircled by an invisible barrier where the dust halted unnaturally. "This place is preserved," whispered Seret, staring out the viewport, like someone wanted this to be found. Cautiously, the crew stepped onto the surface, gravity boots crunching against red sediment. The structure was ancient, made of an alloy their scanners couldn't identify. No heat signatures, no movement. Yet, as they approached the central chamber, something shifted. The doors opened not with hydraulics, but with a breathless sigh, as if the building had been waiting to inhale. Inside, corridors spiraled downward, every path leading toward a central heart. The deeper they went, the more unnerved they became. The walls bore no decoration, only the faint shimmer of micro-carvings, millions of them etched so finely they resembled the grooves of a record dot at the heart of the complex. They found a single room, one chair, one console, and one corpse. It sat motionless, slumped over the control panel. A desiccated being with ridged skin and elongated limbs, long since dead. And yet, the moment Commander Velth touched the console, the room stirred too. Life, a low melodic chime echoed a language unknown, yet somehow felt. Lights flickered, the screen activated, and from the console, a message began to play. A figure appeared, flickering in and out before stabilizing. The same being, this time, though gaunt and its voice crackled through translation filters. "If you are hearing this," it said, "then you stumbled upon the tomb of the Varnic Imperium. I am Eldar Kale, once sovereign, now witness. I speak not as a ruler but as a ghost of mistakes, carved into stars. This world is not a sanctuary. It is a warning." The crew exchanged nervous glances. The recording continued. "We laughed at them," Kale said, his voice hollow. "We saw humanity as frail, soft, obsessed with trade and diplomacy. They let others fight for them. They built no empires, laid no claim to star clusters. They smiled, too easily, apologized too often. We thought them prey." The room fell deathly silent. Commander Velth leaned forward, eyes narrowing, "But they weren't weak," Kale said. "No, they were something far worse. They were patient." Suddenly, new files flooded the console. Images, logs, translated documents, tactical war records, evidence of a history erased. They endured, they observed, and when provoked, they responded, not with rage, not with fury, but with terrifying precision. Velth gritted his mandibles. "What is this?" Kale's hologram flickered. "I led the first strike, piracy, denial, assassinations. We thought ourselves clever. We thought the humans would crumble. Instead, they watched, documented, waited." Seret's voice trembled. "They didn't retaliate." "They did," said Kale, "but not as we understood it. They erased. One by one, our outposts vanished. Our black sites reduced to dust. No survivors, no evidence. Entire fleets disappeared between one heartbeat and the next." The holograms, eyes dull and haunted, bore directly into the lens. I saw our empire collapse in silence, not with explosions, not with screams, but with erasure, as if reality itself no longer acknowledged our existence. Kale slumped forward slightly in the projection, his breath shallow. "We begged, we surrendered." They didn't reply. Only one message was ever broadcast back to us: "So be it." The screen faded to black. Commander Velth stood in stunned silence. The room, though cold, felt suffocating. "Get this back to the Xerelian," he barked. "We need to analyze this every byte." But as they turned to leave, the structure groaned. The lights dimmed. Something unseen pulsed through the dust outside. A new signal. It wasn't just a message, it was a beacon. Commander Seret said, pale, I think we just activated something. The floor trembled beneath them. High above, the sky began. 2 shimmer stars blinking out, one by one, but not from eclipse. From arrival, something was coming, something vast, something ancient, and it wasn't laughing. The stars go silent, the Xyrillians' engines roared to life, but the dread lingering in the crew's chests made the noise feel hollow. Commander Velth stood on the bridge, jaw clenched as he stared at the flickering display. What had been a rogue planet only hours ago was now a beacon pulsing across subspace, drawing in attention from something far beyond their understanding. Report, Velth ordered. Seret's mandibles twitched nervously. The signal is broadcasting omnidirectionally across multiple FTL bands, some of them pre-human, others unknown. It's like the message is encoded in layered languages, all compressed into one fractal pulse. Can we shut it down? We tried, Commander. The console at the core isn't a transmitter, it's a relay. The real signal origin is beneath the crust, possibly planetary-scale tech. Velth looked out the viewport. The dust below the ship churned unnaturally, spiraling upward into the atmosphere like rising mist. Something ancient had awakened, and if Kale's message was to be believed, it had once witnessed humanity's wrath in full. A wrath Velth could hardly comprehend. Suddenly, comms crackled, a voice off. Com, and impossibly clear-spoken perfect galactic common. To those who disturb the tomb, listen well. The crew froze. This was not the recording from earlier. Have trespassed upon a planetary warning buoy. This archive is not a relic, it is a mirror. And now, it has reflected. Velth's skin prickled. Who is this? The voice ignored him. If you are civilized, leave. If you are curious, beware. And if you are cruel, prepare. With a loud pop, every monitor aboard the Xyrillian blinked into darkness. For a moment, only the sound of their own breath filled the bridge, then a soft hum rose from beneath the ship, deep and primal, vibrating through every bulkhead. The crew scrambled, flipping switches, rerouting power. Nothing responded. The engines are locked, Seret whispered. Velth's eyes narrowed. How? A single red light blinked to life on the central monitor. Coordinates. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Systems from every sector of the known galaxy. The timestamps beside them were chilling. Past, present, and future. These are event logs, Seret realized. Places where the message has been received, or will be, and the future ones. Velth asked, his voice low. Seret hesitated. Their predictions, or warnings. The monitor flashed again. New data. Military deployments, fleet movements, encrypted diplomatic logs, classified information from half a dozen major species, including their own. None of it should have been accessible. Somehow, the console had tapped into the galactic network, and then a folder labeled humanity. Velth swallowed. Open it. What they saw next turned their blood cold. Video after video, image after image, humans, standing among alien ruins, staring silently as their enemies begged. Human ships, massive obsidian, faceless, hovering over crumbled fleets, and names, not of battles, but of lessons. The files were titled not by coordinates or dates, but by phrases like the day silence spoke. No mercy, only memory, and diplomacy's last echo. A pattern emerged. Every war humanity had fought wasn't recorded as victory or loss. It was recorded as response. Commander Seret said softly, I think. This is a record of every time someone underestimated them. A sharp alert cut through the silence. Contact, high orbit, shouted Weapons Officer Tren. Unknown ship, no transponder, no power signature. It's just ... there. Velth rushed to the VIEWPORT. Above them, slowly blotting out the stars, was a ship unlike anything the crew had seen. Vast beyond comprehension, its surface dark and jagged like obsidian cliffs. It had no weapons ports, no engines, no visible life. Yet it existed in a way that defied science. The crew stared, transfixed. What is that? Someone whispered then. The voice returned. Your presence has been logged. Your names remembered. You have seen what you should not. Now you must decide. A second signal blinked onto the display. A set of new coordinates. Far off in a neutral system, dead space. Used mostly for fuel relays and maintenance stations. Velth turned to Seret. What is that? Seret's face was pale. It's a meeting point. For what? For an envoy, Seret whispered. Humor. Velth stared at the glowing coordinates. The rogue planet's signal was intensifying, echoing across every channel. Other species would hear it, Others would come, and if they touched what the Xerillian had just witnessed it, they made the same assumptions as Kale's empire, then history would repeat itself. But this time, humanity might not send a warning first. Velth turned to his crew. Prep the jump. We meet the envoy. What if it's a trap? Trent asked. Velth looked once more at the void outside, at the sleeping ship that hung like a nightmare over the stars. Then we'd better learn how to wake the monster before someone else does. As the Xerillian powered its auxiliary drives and tore away from the rogue planet, the dust below churned faster. The red mist curled into spiral patterns visible, from orbit symbols perhaps, or warnings in a language too ancient to be read. Behind them, the tomb world pulsed once more and the void waited, remembering. The human envoy, the Xerillian, emerged from hyperspace with a ripple of distortion, gliding into the silent expanse of the designated dead system. No stars lit the darkness here, just the pale blue of a nearby dwarf and the fractured shell of a collapsed gas giant in the distance. Debris drifted lazily, as if the universe itself had abandoned the place. Velth stood motionless on the bridge, eyes locked on the empty grid. The coordinates were exact. They had arrived, but there was no station, no beacon, no ships. Anything, he asked. Seret shook his head. All scans are clear. No M signatures, no life signs, nothing. It felt wrong, like they had just stepped into a hollow memory, a place that remembered it once had purpose, but had long since given it up. Commander Trend said suddenly, pointing to the edge of the screen. There, on long-range scan, something massive, barely reflecting any light. Velth leaned in. A shape emerged from the shadows, a ship, larger than anything the Xerillian had ever encountered. It looked like a slice of night had been carved out and given form. No hull markings, no light, just a cold, obsidian form drifting slowly into view. Put us on standby, Velth ordered. The alien ship moved with eerie grace, not under thrust, but as if space itself carried it. Then without sound, it halted. Perfectly. Still dot, and then, it began to unfold. Panels split open along its side, revealing a corridor bathed in pale white light. Not inviting, not threatening, just open. Velth narrowed his eyes. It wants us to board. No way, Tren hissed. That thing could atomize us the second we step inside. Velth turned to his crew. It could have done that already at the rogue planet, when we activated the archive. But it didn't, Seret spoke carefully. Commander, if this really is humanity's envoy, we have to understand them, before someone else finds that world and repeats the Varnik's mistakes. Velth nodded once. Suit up, no weapons, just answers. The shuttle floated silently toward the great ship's open corridor. Its interior seemed carved from seamless black alloy, no bolts, no seams, no tech panels, just curves and quiet as they stepped onto the walkway. A deep, omnipresent hum greeted them, not a sound, but a vibration in their bones. They passed through an invisible field that rippled against their armor, and then the door behind them. Sealed dot lights awakened along the corridor, guiding them forward. Velth's boots echoed as they walked. The others followed close behind, tense but silent. The path ended at a circular chamber. In its center, a single figure waited. Human, tall, pale, draped in simple black. Their face was partially hidden by a translucent mask, though the faint glint of dark eyes could be seen beneath. Their hands were folded neatly behind their back, posture still as stone. Welcome, travelers, the figure said, their voice smooth and neutral. You've touched the tomb. Velth stepped forward. Are you human? The figure tilted their head. Partly, enough to speak for them. I am called Asher, an envoy of memory. I carry the record of what was and what may come. Velth felt a cold weight in his gut. That world, the archive, it wasn't just history, was it? Asher nodded. It was judgment. That signal was not merely a story, it was a psychological weapon, encoded with emotional resonance. It allows those who witness it to feel what the Varnak felt, their fear, their regret. Why? Seret asked quietly. So that you may understand. Without injuring, Ashir replied. Velth narrowed his gaze. And if we choose not to understand, Ashir's voice didn't change, then someone else will make the same mistake. And next time, humanity may not be so merciful. Tren stepped forward, anger creeping into his voice. Mercy. That story showed a species being reduced to dust. Entire planets reset to Stone Age conditions. Ashir turned to him slowly. And how many warnings were given before that happened? Silence, humanities. Strength, Ashir continued, was never in weapons. Not truly, it was in memory, in restraint. They endured centuries of insults, sabotage, and war before responding. And when they did so not out of hatred, but out of necessity. Velth exhaled, the weight of Kale's recordings pressing on his thoughts. Then why leave the archive at all? Why not erase the Varnak from existence and let the story die? Ashir stepped closer, because they believed others could learn. That memory was a better deterrent than fear. But that belief is wearing thin. The lights in the chamber dimmed. Ashir raised one hand. A hologram blossomed in the air showing coordinates across the galaxy. Some were marked with green, others red. These are the worlds where the archive signal has been detected. The red ones never returned a response. Their tombs are silent. Are you saying there are others? Serit whispered. Many, Ashir replied. Some heeded the warning, others disappeared. Vilth stared at the map. He realized now that they weren't just lucky, they were being tested, judged, not just as a species but as individuals, who had seen what most would never survive. What happens now? He asked. ASHI turned away and walked to the edge of the platform. A large screen unfolded from the wall showing the rogue planet from above. Around it, more ships were arriving. Explorers, pirates, scholars. The tomb is awake, Ashir said, and it will no longer remain hidden. Your species now bears the burden of witness. If others come with greed or arrogance, you must speak. You must warn. Velth felt the words press against his chest like a weight. Why us? Ashir faced him again. Because humanity will not speak twice. The Zarelian left the dead system hours later, carrying not just data but responsibility. The crew remained quiet as they journeyed home, each of them playing Kale's final words over and over in their minds. And as they passed into hyperspace, Vilth looked once more at the stars, realizing now, with a quiet, sobering certainty, that behind the silence, humanity was always listening. The ones who didn't listen, the Council of Terex. Prime received the signal from the Tomb World weeks later, filtered through data relays, fringe scouts, and black market feeds. By then, the story had mutated. Rumors ran wild. Some called it a dead world bearing ancient treasure. Others claimed it was a forgotten weapon from the early galactic age. A few even warned it was a curse. But no one believed the core truth. No one except the crew of the Zarelian commander. Velth and his officers stood before the Galactic Intermediary Assembly, a rare gathering of delegates, empires, and coalition heads. The chamber hovered within a colossal orbital ring that circled the neutral world of Seferin, a sanctuary for diplomacy that had never seen war within its orbit. Velth had barely finished replaying Kale's final recording when the scoffs began. A manufactured myth, hissed representative Avari of the Draith Dominion. No species, not even humanity, holds the power to rewrite entire planetary systems. A Pysop muttered. The prime of the Gore Coalition, designed to keep us fearful and docile. Only one delegate, a small figure from the Peace Corps, remained silent. She wore no uniform, bore no weapons, and had spoken no words since arriving. Yet her presence alone made several ambassadors uncomfortable. Vilth tried again. You've all seen the same recordings. The beacons are real, the data is real, and the warnings are not empty. We saw the human and they allowed us to walk away because we listened. You chose to believe, Avari snapped. We choose reason. The motion was dismissed. The Tomb World was declared an open site of exploration. Within hours, dozens of independent ships mobilized. The first to arrive was the Stormblight, a heavily armed Terex dreadnought carrying extraction teams and AI-driven war drones. Their leader, Warlord Kess, had made a career out of harvesting forbidden technologies. He saw the warning not as fear but as challenge. On the bridge of his ship, Kess grinned as the rogue planet loomed into view. Secure the core, he barked. Extract anything that moves. If there's knowledge in there, it's ours now. His crew descended quickly, storming the complex the Zarelian had explored. The dust didn't bother them. The magnetic anomalies barely scratched their shielding. They reached the central console in record time. Start the download, Kess ordered. They did. But what they received wasn't Kale's messages, it was something far worse. Start back on Seferin. Velth sat in his temporary quarters, watching the stars through an observation panel. The air was still. The weight of the assembly's dismissal crushed him more than he wanted to admit. They had heard, and yet, they had chosen not to believe. A soft chime broke the silence. He turned toward the holorelay. It wasn't a come, it wasn't a message. It was a classified priority, fed originating from the Stormblight. What showed on the display made his blood freeze. Kess was screaming. The bridge behind him was in chaos. Red lights, sirens, fires. Half his crew was slumped over consoles, unresponsive. They're in the walls, Kess shouted, his voice breaking. No, they are the walls. Velth stared as the feed glitched violently. Shapes moved behind Kess, humanoid and dark. but unnaturally fluid, almost like shadows folded into armor. They moved without sound, without haste, and then the signal went black. He immediately opened a channel to the Peace Corps delegate. When down there, Kess and his team, they activated something new. It wasn't Kale's message, it was a safe. The Terran woman answered, her voice calm. I know you knew this would happen, Velth growled. She looked at him with heavy eyes. Humanity builds weapons only after peace fails. We assumed no one would be foolish enough to trigger the second protocol. What did they unleash? She didn't answer, but in the void, the answer had already begun. The Stormblight never sent another transmission. Galactic traffic logs soon reported fragments of Terex hulls drifting beyond the rogue planet, half melted, twisted by impossible forces. Scans detected no life signs, no wreckage that could be salvaged, only a faint radiation signature, one that matched no known source in galactic records, except one Terran Deep Silence class warships. A week later, in a fringe system beyond the Dominion borders, a fleet of 7 Terex cruisers was intercepted during a routine patrol. They never made contact with the attacker. Their sensors didn't even register the incoming ship. But civilian satellites captured a glimpse, just a single frame. A warship, black as obsidian, trailing no drive exhaust, and bearing only one visible marking written in archaic Terran script. We told you. No survivors. No escape pods. Only silence. Back on Beren, the assembly convened again, this time under emergency protocols. The room was tense, muted. Every representative stared at the blank screen where moments ago a Terex distress signal had played. All 32 crew members on board the Stormblight had been vaporized by an unknown force. No known weapon could replicate the dissolution, and still, the Peace Corps delegate said nothing. Velth rose from his chair. You all heard the warning. You laughed. Now it's happening, Avari glared. You're suggesting humanity is retaliating. No, Velth said grimly. I'm saying they aren't responding. This isn't a war. This is their deterrent. He turned to the Peace delegate. You said humanity builds weapons only when peace fails. What else is out there? The delegate finally spoke. We don't know, she said. Not entirely, not even we have access to all of it. These protocols were built by generations past, meant to be triggered only if humanity was threatened by extinction. But the Terex weren't attacking Earth. Someone objected. They didn't have to, she replied softly. They disrespected the memory of those we mourned. They tore open a tomb sealed by kindness. And now, the machines remember. As the assembly fell into stunned silence, Velth understood. Humanity didn't just fight with ships or weapons, they fought with history, with principles. And when ignored, their silence was never empty, it was the last breath before the stars burned. The tomb beneath the tomb, the Galactic Assembly fell apart in less than 12 days. What had once been a council of unified worlds fractured under the weight of fear. Delegates abandoned the neutral system of Sapphire in silence, their ships fleeing. Without ceremony, trade agreements were torn up, embassies closed. Secret transmissions flowed between paranoid empires like blood through open wounds. But the cause was not open war, it was the silence. Ships began disappearing in sectors adjacent to the rogue planet. No distress calls, no wreckage, just absence. In some cases, a single data packet was recovered, always the same. A short video of a black warship emerging from shadow, with that same message stamped into the void in Terran script. We told you. Commander Velth watched one such video from his quarters aboard the Zerelian, now in quarantine orbit above a Peace Corps security platform. He hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kale's withered face, and Ashir's warning, but this time, something new had emerged. From the lower atmosphere of the tomb world, a deep band signal had been detected. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a request. Coordinates embedded in the signal pointed not to space, but deeper into the planet itself, beneath the dust, beneath the archive. The Peace Corps called it the second layer. Velth had been summoned to observe the excavation, but not alone. He met Ashir again on the surface, this time within a sealed exo suit. Despite the suffocating red haze and flickering lights from the hovering drones, Ashir's calm presence felt heavier than armor. You knew this existed, Velth said, watching the scanners trace an outline beneath the ancient structure. I suspected, Ashir replied, but no human has ever returned here. This site was abandoned before we joined the greater galactic community. Why? Ashiru's eyes didn't blink. Because we were afraid of what we might become if we stayed. Velth looked at him, unsettled. What does that mean? Ashir remained silent as the ground rumbled beneath them. The second layer was not a vault. It was not a weapon facility or a command post. It was a sanctuary. Carved into the crust of the planet was an inverted city. Towering spires descended like stalactites into a vast open chasm, suspended by some invisible gravitational lattice. Structures were grown, not built smooth, glass-like crystal fused with machinery. Velth and his team descended in a gravity skiff, staring in awe. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Even the atmosphere thinned, becoming still dead. Yet their suits remained stable. Energy readings pulsed beneath them like a slow, ancient heartbeat. And at the center, waiting in a shimmering cocoon of rotating symbols, was a single figure. Not alien, not machine, not human. He floated upright, suspended in a lattice of gravity and data, pale, ageless, and perfectly still. His eyes were closed, and yet he seemed to sense them. Velth stared. Is he alive? Ashir spoke softly. Yes. His name is Dorian Kell. He is the one who wrote the conventions. You mean the Geneva Conventions? Velth asked. No, Ashir said. The Stellar Accord. The one humans never published. The one that governs how humanity responds to extinction-level threats. Dorian created it, and then chose to remain here alive, awake, watching until it was needed again. Velth's voice was hushed. But why bury him? Because Dorian is the final safeguard, Ashir replied. He carries the command codes. If the outer defenses fail, if diplomacy fails, he decides what comes next. Suddenly, the cocoon pulsed. Dot symbols lit up around Dorian, orbiting faster. The team's translators struggled to keep up. He's waking up, Seret said. Something triggered it. The cocoon cracked with a shuddering hum. The light dimmed. Dorian's eyes opened, slowly piercing, intelligent, yet distant. He spoke in perfect galactic common. You were warned, he said. And still they came. Velth stepped forward. We tried to stop them. I know, Dorian replied. That's why I woke up. The team stared in confusion. Velth's heart pounded. What happens now? Dorian's gaze fell on the display above them. It flickered with maps of dozens of systems. Red pulses danced across known Terek space. He raised one hand and everything froze in 72 hours. He said, the systems responsible for desecrating this place will be isolated, their communications cut, their fleets shadowed. Velth's voice cracked. You're not going to destroy them. Dorian looked at him almost kindly. Why destroy a mind that still has time to learn? The humans that built this place believed in evolution, not erasure. If they cannot adapt, they will fall on their own. Then what is this? Velth whispered. This, Dorian said, gesturing to the crystal city around them, is not a weapon, it is a mirror. The deeper a species digs into our legacy, the more it sees of itself. The second layer isn't for war. It's for reflection, but reflection is painful. Seret, who had remained silent until now, spoke. If humanity has this, if you have this, what could possibly threaten you? Ashir stepped forward beside Dorian. Us, he said. Only we can. Later that day, the Peace Corps issued a quiet but chilling message to the galactic networks. It was not a threat, not a demand. It was a reminder spoken in soft, emotionless clarity. Humanity remembers, and it forgives slowly. Across the stars, silence reigned. No further ships approached the rogue world. The tomb, once awakened, was now watched not by weapons or fleets, but by those who carried the burden of memory. The last line before fear across the galaxy, the tale of the tomb world, was no longer a myth. The name Dorian Kell became a whisper traded in hushed voices across council halls, encrypted military briefings, and pirate dens alike. The Peace refused all requests for comment. No recordings of the second layer were ever released, and yet, everyone knew something had changed. The galaxy had learned that the humans had a second history, one they kept buried beneath glass smiles and open hands, and at its center was not a god, not a machine, but a single man who had chosen to watch instead of rule. Most species backed away, cautiously re-evaluating their alliances with the Terran sphere. Others issued quiet diplomatic statements of respect, but not all. In the far rim of space, nestled in a dense field of nebulae and gravitational anomalies, lay the Karnix hegemony, a war-born species of reptilian tacticians with a cultural obsession for testing strength. The Karnix viewed the Peace Corps' silence as weakness. Their high strategist, Varnik Thul, interpreted the warning from Dorian as a calculated bluff. If a single human could unmake us, he scoffed to his generals, they would not hide in tombs, they would sit on thrones. Thul wasn't interested in conquest, he wanted truth. Was the legend real? Could humanity truly unleash the kind of extinction Kale described? He ordered Operation Glass Veil, a coordinated incursion not into Terran space but into a system adjacent to the rogue planet, deliberately violating the quarantine protocols the Peace Corps had established. The operation involved 3 fleets, 2 stealth dreadnoughts, and a network of interference arrays to block all incoming and outgoing signals. The Karniks planned to strike fast, extract whatever data they could from the tomb's outer perimeter, and escape before the Peace Corps could even respond. They arrived in formation Fleet Black, weapons primed, shields rippling, and for a moment, everything was still. No human response, no envoy. No Dorian. Proceed, Varnick Thol commanded, and that was the moment the stars blinked from the edge of known space. Something unfolded. Not a ship, not even a fleet. It was a velar lattice of energy and matter that stretched across light years and seconds. Space warped, as though reality was being corrected, realigned. Ships screamed through their own sensors as gravitational ratios broke under their feet, and then it appeared. One vessel. Silent. Black. Covered in ancient etchings that burned like fire when seen directly. Humanity's last sentence, the name etched in Terran calligraphy across its side. Varnick Thol gave the order to fire before his heart even stopped pounding. All ships locked weapons. Particle lancers, destabilizers, fusion beams. They tore through the darkness toward the vessel. The void swallowed them. The shots didn't deflect. They didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist. Then came the transmission. No visuals, no sound, just one phrase, carved in quantum entangled code across every Karnik ship's AI core. You were told, you chose fire. The crew of the Skarn Rain, the Karnik's flagship, watched helplessly as their targeting systems began reversing. Their weapons recalibrated not on the human ship, but on each other. Internal systems failed. Navigation spun out of control. The dreadnoughts fell from formation like dying birds, and still, the black ship never moved. It didn't need to. When the dust settled, 40% of the Karnik's fleet was missing. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone. Sensors registered, no energy trail, no mass conversion, no debris. Entire vessels had been erased from existence. The Peace Corps issued no public statement, no claim, no threat, but one encrypted message was received. Across all Karnik systems, the line has been drawn. Do not test what remains buried. Back on the tomb world, Dorian Kell sat beneath the crystalline arches of the second layer. His eyes were closed once again. His body returned to stasis, but his mind remained aware. Asher stood alone before him, reporting the incident with precise detail. They struck without warning. They left with less than they came. Dorian's voice echoed without moving. Was it enough? Ashir paused. For most, yes, and for the they are already negotiating peace. They sent their youngest speaker unarmed. Dorian nodded slowly. Then the system holds. For now, Ashir hesitated. And if the next test comes from something greater? Dorian opened his eyes just slightly. Then I wake fully and the accord becomes law. Ashir's voice grew softer. Would you survive it? No, Dorian admitted. But neither would the stars that forget what we are. Meanwhile, aboard the Zerelian, Velth received the decrypted logs from the Peace Corps. Not the whole record but fragments of a document known as the Stellar Accord. The words chilled him to his core. Humanity is not the center of the galaxy, nor do we wish to be. But when threatened, truly threatened, we do not rise in anger. We evolve. We do not destroy. We remember. And memory is sharper than any blade forged by hand. Velth turned off the console, staring into the dark beyond his viewport. He knew now the truth most species could never accept. Humanity didn't need to rule to be feared. They simply needed to remember. The final Echo Galactic year 9320, month of Ash. One solar cycle after the tomb. World's reawakening. The galaxy was no longer the same. The Zerelian now served under Terran Peace Corps authority, repurposed as a long-range diplomatic observer ship. Commander Velth remained its captain, not by assignment but by choice. He had seen too much to walk away. He had stood before a ghost of human vengeance, and he knew if the galaxy was to survive, someone had to remember how close they had come to losing everything. From orbit, the tomb world below now bore a new name in Terran records. Epitaph-9. No longer a rogue planet. It had become the most silently guarded location in the known galaxy. The Peace Corps stationed no fleets, no planetary weapons, no obvious barriers. Instead, a passive relay beacon circled the world, quiet, soft, always transmitting a single message in every known language. This is not a fortress. This is a lesson. Learn well. And yet someone hadn't. Not a species this time. Not an empire, but a splinter faction born from fractured belief. The children of Linear, a nihilistic cult of post-organics who believed that any life was a mistake. They saw the tomb not as a warning but as a challenge to end history itself. They descended without warning in a fleet of warped biomechanical craft, too strange for even the Peace Corps to recognize. Unlike the Terriks or the Karniks, the children didn't come for power or technology. They came to end memory, to burn the last record of the Varnik's fall, to erase the living conscience of humanity from the universe. Velth and his crew watched the assault from high orbit. No transmission, Seret said quietly. No demand, no message. They're not here to talk. Velth's eyes narrowed. They're here to unmake, one by one. The children's ships dropped into the upper atmosphere of Epitaph 9. The sky bled fire and ash. Their weapons were unlike anything recorded, spatial thorns that punctured reality. Drones made of folded dark matter, gravity-shearing harpoons. They didn't destroy structures. They unraveled them as if reality itself was thread. The Peace made no move. No human fleets came. No dreadnought cloaked in silence emerged. Velth stood in his command room, heart racing, hands clenched. Why aren't they responding? Ashir's voice echoed behind him, though the envoy hadn't stepped onto the bridge. Because this isn't their fight. Velth turned sharply. They'll let this happen. Ashir looked calm, tired. No, but Dorian will decide what happens next, and he has not yet spoken. On the surface, in the crystalline second layer, the invaders reached the heart. Dorian Kell stood awake this time, his skin pale, veins glowing with light. The children of Cinder entered the chamber, drifting, floating, half shadow, half metal. They made no sound, no declaration, just pure, unfiltered intent. Destruction. Dorian raised a hand. I am the last breath of restraint, he said. The air trembled. The walls hummed with layered memories of Kael's fall, of the Karnik's fleet's silence, of every moment humanity chose not to fire first. Symbols bloomed in the walls, codes older than the Terran calendar. Languages never recorded. Names of worlds lost to arrogance. And then Dorian whispered 3 words. Gloves are off. In orbit, the Zarelian scanners collapsed. The crew reeled as data overload surged through the systems. Velth gripped the rail as light, not ordinary light, but time-folded light, burst from the planet's core. A sphere of reality bloomed upward, swallowing the children's fleet whole. There was no explosion. There was no scream. There was only clarity. The invading ships vanished, not turned to dust, not atomized. They simply ceased to be, gone from memory, gone from every timeline, gone from every database, biological and digital alike. In the archive of the Peace Corps, a single record appeared under the children of Sin. Entry removed, violation of existence protocol, memory deleted. Velth stumbled to his seat, breath heaving. They erased them from reality. Ashir turned slowly. No, Dorian gave them the same chance he gave the Varnak, but they refused to exist with memory. So he removed them from it. Velth looked haunted. That's impossible. Ashir looked down. So is mercy, some would say. 1 week later, the galaxy met again, not in a formal assembly, but in an unprecedented transmission. No faces, no names, just voices. And at the center, humanity spoke, not from Earth, not from Terra Nova, but from Epitaph-9. Dorian Kell's message was simple. This galaxy is old, wiser than it admits. Our mistake was believing that strength came from force. But strength, true strength, is restraint. We are not here to rule, we are here to endure. But if we are tested again, we will not warn a second time. The message ended. No threats, no fleets, no fireworks, just truth. Commander Velth returned to Epitaph 9 one last time, not as a soldier, not as an envoy, but as a witness. He walked the perimeter of the dust fields, where the red storm forever circled but never entered, where the past still shimmered in the distance like a mirage. That he found a monument there, simple, angular, Terran in design. It bore no names, no flags, no symbols, just a sentence carved into eternal alloy. If we must burn, then let it be a fire that teaches the stars to fear arrogance. Velth placed his gloved hand on the plaque and closed his eyes. He had seen what lay behind, humanity's silence, and he would never forget.